17 June 2023. Sleep makes all difference, and it's a curious thing that nowadays we must fight hard to keep essential things like sleep, eat your preference or not choice without parasites, contamination, your milk without bacteria, and this kind of thing has a purpose for sure. The Federal Bureau of Investigation in United States consider that in general the criminal activity has as first goal the advantage or the gain. This is equally told by the international police and organizations macro as policies, risk analysis, governance and compliance like the OECD having the same issue. We will check that this kind of thing, including for instance a murder that is not a casual murder, but a contextualized event, goes because your perception as conjuncture or architecture switched from something regular at regular purpose, including the mission of your organization, but must be carried and guided or led by someone or a group, into something illegal that will chase down the things are supposed to be made or choke the incomes and resources that are required to have things made. The anti-crime budget took this risk out of the scenario and bring to ourselves a control model, considering that we are working with the Audacious Asia since September 2022. We will launch the phase 2. The phase 2 is on blog risk report 2023 tracejune.blogspot.com. Before we had the events considering the failure or logical gap impacting premises by the intentional silence as association on governments, corporate area and states observed for instance at stimulus and vaccines during the COVID-19, changing your legitimacy to do your accountability as investor, company, government or state, since the individual considering the context as market with events on it and the conjunctural contextualization between macro environment and micro environment as your economic records, all today failured and not reliable. This goes because the criminal activity could achieve the institutional power in general, misguiding the procedural legitimacy to occupy and have the choice about the chairs that will be filled on governmental areas and corporate areas, which in general goes by election. Since you observed that this has a repetition as a frequency, it's not difficult to understand and going all around that you only have to trace a single quadrant at the entire global conjuncture to raise a model of control, preventing things. And we use the show business because to broadcast things all around, you must have stimulation and stimulus accepted all around, not considering only the corruption. We switch it, for instance, the corruption into something with value for the justice and system of ethical consequence, not linked with the organized crime by a plea bargain. And we can check that the pattern as spreading the criminal activity by variety of crimes and variance as Drivers of criminality goes all around. We walk through this and got back the business as business, which are the main purpose. Make money, but criminal result, it's not money, it's criminal result will be claimed someday. First thing we will have today, if I'd like to embrace someone, and the first embrace is something unique. I wouldn't try to avoid, for instance, this is speech as harassment and other things, and I decided to set a surprise or something as something unique, handmade for this person. It's a model that we have on brand and market. I was having this on TV yesterday and regular TV, which is something very interesting, especially in Brazil, an underdeveloped country with no interest in do something real. It's named the AIO, attention, interest, and opinion. We will check that I have the America, USA. I have the Europe. I could observe that I have the South America here. I will check, here is the North America. That the distortions here and distortion here and here are kind of pretty much the same. And I decided to use this to highlight everything, but because those failures was observed at the institution, and in general having a financial expectation or something, considering the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Interpol and the OECD, in general supporting terror, drugs, paramilitary, electoral crimes, and frauds. So I can understand that is everything inside the institution of North America, Europe, and South America. To do this, I can't do this with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I must have international drivers, and was claimed by the Interpol at the previous administration, strong network at corporations. I will use, for instance, the Interpol and the OECD to do the approach. And also a global company, for instance, the IBM. And here we are kind of having this model presented as an organogram and workflow by things deep. Second thing we will observe that was declared on current summit on Asia, that the activity on Asia as productive system and the tax system on Asia are having a problem. In general, the tax is something exclusively under the administration of the government and the public sector, because it's a public investment system. But you do the taxation in general, considering the wealth you have as gain you made. But since you are having storage of things illegal, the taxation that must do this considering your regular gain, you probably wouldn't have the legitimacy to do the taxation of something illegal if you are holding something illegal. So your capacity to solve problems will be decreased, and then you will reduce the salary of your activity and employees and things like this. You set a gap here, which is a confession of debit was made considering the international business TV. Let's suppose that my research and my private living suffered aggression of the organized crime in a transcontinental level, clustered on budget, segmented and individualized by chair offered to all courts around the globe. They claim the guiltiness and ethical consequence, including the procedural prison against the offenders. If I did this, for instance, during the period as supportive and stakeholding the interests of the antitrust justice in USA and Europe, and considering the approach by areas with legitimacy to do this approach, I probably will have the antitrust justice back officing the interests and the purpose of intellectual asset created to this activity. So, if the aggressions made a hard prescription as ambition 33 trillion with penalties 4 trillion and having notice that you start on zero, of course that we could check that the pattern as criminal activity and aggression by institutional violence goes like this. And I will have here 33 trillion plus 4 trillion as financial penalty, based on the profitable result as organized crime and transnational organized crime in Brazil, considering the institutional violence the architecture used against my research during the period, and the period is until this time, on my private living. I will switch the side of this, and guess what? We have an identity here. But here I have 37 trillion as expectation. Here I have the lack of capacity on Asia to solve the regular things on day by day, including the payment and the accomplishment of transparency by things paid. I will have this as a bond, for instance, and I will use part of this because seems that the value is a bit bigger, and I can, for instance, buy the debit confession on Asia, which implies the hate as risky more. See? And I will hold this bond and put an essential clause on it that after the first transfers and payroll that are rolling the bond by me, and I told investor decisions belongs to me, but the investor is the owner of things, expectation, but has a background of a lot of interest. And that my case, I decided to pick the antitrust justice on USA and Europe, and have linked also with the system of justice on Asia and courts of justice to, since not linked with the organized crime, to apply consequence against the organized crime. I will roll the bond. Of course that this allowed me to research not only the area as debt, but the capacity of Asia to do the payment. We are, having this, the entire research of Asia. Previous moment, we told that we had the problem in considering the North America, Europe, and South America, setting a boat, and considering all things we have here, we will probably transfer the expectation to Asia, but have India in the middle, right? And then I told, let's see what's happening this, the second phase of the audit Asia by bonds, considering the purchase or the decision as achievement of those bonds to research things, with the obligation as internal essential clause at the bond, have the bond covered after the first rolling. We have the eastern, the western part of the continent, the east part of the continent, both linked by corruption and crimes, and the division of Greenwich. You can switch and change, for instance, the Greenwich even Asia about things, and we present things we did, things we are doing. Now the last issue. Let's considering that to do this, I must have some kind of element here to understand this pattern, and I will consider the international police, the contribution of institution local not linked with the organized crime, and a global company like the IBM having all tax criminals, for instance, inside, spread the dollar around the globe to understand the range of variance and variety of all crimes, and by frequency I will understand how the density as micro environment and architecture as macro global index. IBM can trace the negative one as corruption until fix the entire situation as global company and part of the architecture controlled by index. We will have that this intellectual asset, and for instance the arguments at the judicial power, if are exclusive, belongs to the user, and the interest on it to keep the integrity of this intellectual asset carrying at least the judicial power USA and Europe, and the antitrust purpose departments that we are working since from the very beginning, like the US Defense and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And the legitimacy to claim the 37 trillion is not weird. The weird thing is have the continuity of criminals at the institution without no dismiss, even after all this presented. Did any of them presented the requirement as reason to be a criminal inside the institution and have the protection and criminal activity? No. Have a nice weekend.